This is Lesson 1. What is art? Do contemporary art forms challenge student notions of what art is supposed to be and do? In this lesson, you will be presented various works of fine and performance art, and we will look into artists, critics, and audiences' definitions of art. At the end of this lesson, you will create your own definitions and express them in the form of original works. In December 1997, at the Royal Academy of Art in London, an exhibition entitled Sensation was first realized. Showcased with a collection of contemporary art owned by Charles Saatchi, including many works by young British artists. Among the 42 artists represented is Damien Hirst, perhaps Britain's best-known artist of this generation, who is now recognized throughout the world for his works composed of sections of animals such as sharks, lambs, and cows, preserved and presented in sealed, formaldehyde-filled glass containers. Hirst is reportedly Britain's richest living artist, and death is a central theme in his works. This work, entitled The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living, is a 4.3-meter-long tiger shark, which became the iconic work of British art in the 1990s, and the symbol of Brit art worldwide. Here are dissected remnants of a cow, presented in layers of glass cases. And here is a picture of another Damien Hirst installation showing a close-up of a rotting head of a cow swarming with flies. Also included are works by the brothers Jake and Dinos Chapman, who explore a complex and bizarre world of sexual identity, transmutation, and commercialism, with their childlike, multi-bodied, and multi-body part figures. Jenny Saville's large, almost abstract paintings of overwhelmingly fleshy female forms recall both Rubens and Lucian Freud. These images challenge society's notion of the ideal female form. The show generated controversy in London and New York due to the inclusion of images of Myra Hindley, a depiction of the child killer by Marcus Harvey, painted using acrylic and, as a brush, the plaster cast of a child's hand. Presented also is the work entitled The Holy Virgin Mary, a portrait of the Holy Mother partially made of elephant dung by the artist Chris Ofili, who declared his innocence when accused of being blasphemous, pointing out both his strong Catholic faith and the tradition and legitimate use of dung in African art. More recently, in October 2010, a descendant of France's King Louis XIV has sought a court order to halt a radical contemporary exhibition by Takashi Murakami in the royal apartments at Versailles. According to him, the artwork sullied the palace's supreme French taste. Legal action has been done to rid the palace's ornate halls of the fiberglass cartoon figures and giant Buddha statues, calling for respect of the chateau and its tradition. According to those who opposed the exhibition, these puppets displayed are frankly grotesque, and these works undermine the unity of style and the essence of the museum, which lead to the opposition's conclusion that these things are not art. What do you think about the juxtaposition of the fiberglass cartoon figures and the palace's ornate halls? Does it work? You may also remember well the controversial art installation of Medea Cruz entitled Politeísmo, which became the talk of our nation and triggered a debate between art and religion. These are all examples of contemporary art, but what makes these objects art? Who defines what art is? To try to tackle this question, we will learn about the evolution of art throughout history, and how art of the past has influenced what it is today. In our effort to answer the question, what is art, we will be looking at the line between what is considered art and not art according to two perspectives. We are going to look at the perspective of the artist's intentions for the piece and then the viewer's opinion of the piece. Now, art has been around pretty much since the prehistoric times, even before man had language, and you already know that there are many different forms of art. Look at the difference between this pre-Raphaelite painting and this abstract expressionistic work. These two are clearly different art forms. How does art get from one form to the next? Well, it happens in an evolution and through stages. These stages happen through either deviation or development. Examples of deviation include the Impressionists and how they rebelled against established art forms, formal institutions, and the academics. Impressionism is a 19th century art movement that originated with a group of Parisian artists. Their independent exhibitions brought them to prominence during the 1870s and the 1880s in spite of harsh opposition from the conventional art community in France. Its founding members include Claude Monet, Edgar Degas, and Camille Pissarro, among others. Claude Monet's work entitled Impression Sunrise, exhibited in 1874, gave the Impressionist movement its name when the critic Louis Leroy accused it of being a sketch or impression and not a finished painting. This particular work demonstrates the techniques many of the independent artists adopted: short, broken brushstrokes that barely convey forms, pure, unblended colors, and an emphasis on the effects of light. In the global history of art, the theory of representation has been established as a highly practiced art style. For the longest time, this theory has been applied in the renditions of images by artists. I will give you an example to illustrate. Here is an apple. Here is how you see it. Here is how you represent an apple. You represent it exactly as you see it. The Impressionists didn't like that. They wanted to represent the apple as they saw it, their impression of the apple, what they thought it looked like. So they started their own movement and got their style known as a legitimate art style. Now, these deviant methods that artists adapted was not only evident in Europe but also in Asia. Let's take the Philippines for example. After World War II, the Neo-Realist painting school was realized as a deliberate intent to challenge the older generation of art, as exemplified in the works of Manansala and Apueva. For one reason or another, artists rebel, deviate, and react against society, seeking new principles of composition and creative processes, and thus initiate epoch-making innovations. The other tendency of how art goes from one form to the next is by development, and this can be seen when stylistic renditions build on to other art styles to create new art forms. These kinds of developments in style can be illustrated with the work of Paul Cézanne. Paul was a post-impressionist. He was kind of stuck in the middle of Impressionism and whatever was going to come next, which was Cubism. Post-Impressionists extended Impressionism while rejecting its limitations. They continued using vivid colors, thick application of paint, distinctive brushstrokes, and real-life subject matter, but they were more inclined to emphasize geometric forms, to distort form for expressive effect, and to use unnatural or arbitrary color. I mean, look at this painting of Cézanne. Is this how you'd normally recall a mountainous landscape? In a way, we can say that Cézanne bridged the gap between the Impressionists and the Cubists. If you're going to compare Monet's impressionistic haystacks to Cézanne's post-impressionistic still life, you will see their obvious differences in style and technique, and Cézanne's works started to embody signs of Cubism. which ultimately developed to Picasso's obvious Cubist style. Therefore, we could say that art styles build on to other art styles to create new art forms. We must fully understand how the concept of art changed through time and how the concept applies today so that we can find out what really defines art. Now, let's look into the two main groups of art who are the proponents of the art styles and art movements we have been talking about thus far. There are the academics, and their influence include the Pre-Raphaelites, Art Nouveau, Art Deco, Precisionism, and Abstract Expressionism in the 50s. The flip side to this art movement, the rebellious side, are the moderns, and they branch out into what we have been talking about, like Impressionism, Cubism, Futurism, Dadaism, and Conceptualism. Now, we are really going to focus on conceptualism here because it is one of the most highly criticized forms of art and it's the type of art that we have today. Let's begin. This is a picture of vomit. The artist ingested her paints and then projected it on her final work. Art or not art? This one is a picture of it's a urinal. It's entitled The Fountain, made by the very famous artist Marcel Duchamp. This was exhibited in a museum. Why are these pieces considered art? Who defines art? Well, according to the artist Marcel Duchamp, the subject matter is not important. What matters is that he, as an artist, had chosen it to be art and therefore it is. This piece clearly leaves us viewers on the edge, not really knowing if what is being presented to us is art or not. This is what the conceptualists wanted you to think. This was their main aim in art, and they have become successful by making their viewers think. So you see, another way to look at art is through the artist's perspective. Let's take the painter Jackson Pollock as an example. Every time Jackson Pollock paints, he believes that he is channeling the cosmos through his paint drippings. He richly conveyed energy and movement into his works. He was successful if you, the viewer, deem it to be true, that you see his energy or feel the movement in his works. For the conceptualists, if they are successful with their intentions for a piece, then it is art. The viewer's perception of art relies heavily on their personal opinions of a piece. Some people like Rauschenberg. Some like a perfectly constructed teapot. Art is what you make it. Art is what you believe it is. You either like it or you don't. Art evolves through styles, which happens because of deviation or development, and it is defined through the intentions of the artist for the piece and the viewer's opinions of the piece. What is art then? In our pluralistic society, we can no longer answer that question unequivocally. When in 1913, Marcel Duchamp denied the formal creative act by promoting his ready-mades, he launched a provocative protest against the traditional thinking of the academics, which placed art on a pedestal. Since that moment, no one can doubt the fact that art and the way we respond to it has undergone a radical change. It was Dada that decisively refuted the old and all-embracing claim that art is both a guidance and an influence. In the controversy that has ensued between experts and the public on this issue of what defines art, we maintain that the ordinary person's view, based as it is largely on common sense, is the correct one. The only cure for hostile reactions is constant exposure, study, and analysis.